Thank you. Good afternoon. This Township of Selwyn Committee of Adjustment meeting will come to order for Tuesday, November the 26th, 2024. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of the committee, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Noting none, we will go to the planner to announce the purpose for the meeting. Per.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Committee of Adjustment is holding a public hearing in accordance with Section 45 of the Planning Act in order to consider 4 applications today for relief from bylaw 2009-021, being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Township of Selwyn. This prescribed notice of public hearing was provided via prepaid first-class mail to all residents within a 60-meter radius of the property subject to the applications, as well as by a sign posted on the subject lands. The notices were also available on the Township's website. The notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn, but does not make oral submission at the public hearing or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment, before the committee gives or refuses to give approval to the application, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn in respect of the proposed variances before the committee gives or refuses to give approval to the application, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment, providing your name and address or email address. The first application today is A26-24. This is for 3057 Beechwood Drive. The application seeks relief from the bylaw in order to permit a 106.8 square meter, or about roughly 1,149 square foot dwelling addition, and a new 54 square meter open deck. The variances requested are to reduce the minimum high water mark setback from 30 meters to 21.2 meters to a dwelling addition, and to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 16 meters to an open deck. I find that the application meets the 4 tests of the minor variance, and I do recommend the application for approval. In terms of comments on this one, we've received comments from the Conservation Authority in support of the application, noting that permits from the Conservation Authority will be required. The Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board and County Public Works have also provided comments of no concern.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application?
Yeah.
You're Dave Morgan?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Do you want to say anything in addition to what the planner has said?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone online to speak in favor or against this application, Madam Deputy Clerk?
I have no one here registered for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I will bring it to committee. Are there any questions on this application? Seeing none, we will move on to the next one. Please pair A2824.
Yeah, next application A2824. This is for 700 Hatton Avenue. This application deals with an approval in order to permit a new 19.3 or 208 square foot screened in porch, a new 32.7 or 352 square foot open deck, and a replacement 15.5 square meter, 166 square foot open deck. The requested variances are to reduce the minimum high water marks from 30 meters to 21.4 meters to a dwelling, to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 19.7 meters to an open deck on the east side of the dwelling, and to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 18.46 meters to an open deck on the westerly side of the dwelling. Again, I find that the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. I do recommend this application for approval. In terms of agency comments, we've gotten comments of no concern from the County Public Works and the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board. And again, the Conservation Authority is in support, but notes that permits will be required for this application as it moves forward to building permit stage.
Okay, thank you very much, Per. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? I understand that Beth Stock, the agent for this, is online.
That is correct, Madam.
Hi.
Oh, there we go.
Good afternoon. Is there anything you wish to add to our planner's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no extra information for you right now, but I'm available here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here to speak against this application? No one online?
Madam Chair, we do have a Terry Jenkins that is here for this application.
You might be for another one.
Okay, yes, sorry. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right. So no one is virtually in attendance. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions with regards to this application? Seeing none, we will move on to the next application, which is file number A2924. Here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for 1754 Gordon Fitzgerald Lane. This seeks relief from the bylaw in order to permit a new roughly 3,000 square foot dwelling with an attached garage, including a 230 square foot open deck, a 76 square foot front porch, and two covered decks being roughly 226 square feet and 226.1 and 226.7 square feet. This is a vacant lot. So in order, our official plan permits encroachment into the 30-meter setback for vacant lots of record. So we are reducing the high water mark setback to 25.73 meters to permit this covered deck and screened room within the 30-meter setback. Given the irregular lot configuration of this particular vacant lot, I find that the proposal does meet the required 7.5 meters square or 7.5 meter, not square meter, setback from the front yard lot line in order to maintain a parking area for the proposed new dwelling. So in this case, I find that the minimal encroachment of about 5 meters into the high water mark setback at the south corner is reasonable. And I do find that the application meets the fourth test of a minor variance. And I recommend this application for approval. In terms of comments, we've received comments of no concern from the Pine Ridge District School Board, County Public Works, and the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority. We do have one letter in opposition from Mike Brooks, stating that he believes that an environmental impact study should be completed, that there could be cumulative impacts based on degrading the character of the community and the local ecosystem. And he's questioning the suitability of the proposed development, pushing the development envelope slightly into the 30-meter setback. He's also concerned over the future use of the property for an Airbnb. And for these reasons, he specifically recommends that the committee deny the application. I'll just add in terms of the requirement for an environmental impact study, there's no triggers at this particular location for an EIS from planning policy perspective.
Okay. Is
Those are
that
my comments.
okay? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I understand that we have virtually in attendance B. Fraser, who is the agent.
Yes, no, I'm not the agent. I'm two doors down from where the proposed location is. I'm not opposed to it. My questions are more around the nature of how much, based on the setbacks, living in the area, just trying to get an idea of how much trees are going to be removed from the waterfront property in order to achieve those setbacks. I don't know if there's anybody that can comment on it, because based on the size of the building, it looks like just about every one of the trees would go.
Okay. If
and-
I can, Mr. Fraser, if I can park you for just a moment, because I should be asking if there's anyone here in favor of the application. And I know you're saying you're not in favor or not, you want some information, but if you'll let me proceed with that, we'll come back to you, okay?
Okay.
Okay, is there anyone here that is in favor of this application in attendance? Yes, sir, could I have your name? Okay, is there anything that you would like to add to the report given by our planner?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. So now, Mr. Fraser, we will come to you with this question, and Mr. Denham, are you prepared to answer the question? If you are, if you can go to the mic behind you, because whatever you say that is not on the mic can't be heard online.
Sure. And then we brought the potential buyer of the lot and builder with
Yes, could I have the name?
Mike Hackenthorpe,
Can we have it spelled, please?
MIKE
Yeah,
HECK
Heck.
ENDORN.
Oh, Mike Heckendorn. Can you please take the mic behind you, sir? And did you hear the question prior?
Oh, yeah.
If you wouldn't mind answering it,
So the concern is just about how many trees would be cut down?
I believe.
Basically, yeah.
At this point, I don't really know. I can't really answer that because I don't I have to get the house actually laid out on the property to answer the question. Obviously, if you've been to the property, there's a lot of tree front that you can't see the lake. And for me personally, that's the interest in the property, is that it's lakefront. So although I definitely would not want to cut down all the trees, I would definitely want to expose the lake so that I can see the lake and have that view.
Okay. And I have one other question, and it's on behalf of your actual neighbor. There is a lamp post, and based on the markers of the survey where the property goes, the lamp post, the neighbor thought it was theirs, but it seems to be on the new property. The lamp post is helpful. She pays for the light and whatnot. And without it, it is pretty dark in that area. So it would I know you can't give an answer now, but it would be some consideration for that lamp post, depending on how the house gets laid out onto the property, because she's been paying for it for years. I think it's through Hydro. She thought the lamp post was on her property, but based on the survey marks, it looks like it's not. So I don't know if that's the surveyor or if that's where Hydro had put the post way back when, not sure.
Okay, that isn't really a question for this committee of adjustment, but you've duly noted it.
Yeah. So I believe I know what, like, the hydro post, is that where the light is?
Yeah, it's on, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
a Century Light.
yeah. Obviously for me personally, like, security is a big thing. So if it's gonna have light there at the end of the day, I would be definitely wanting to keep it. As far as paying for it or how that goes, I'm not sure I can answer that right now, but.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fraser.
All right, thank you.
Anything else you wish to add, Mr. Herndon?
No, not really.
Can do it.
Just, I've been working up here a little bit with some people, and I like this neighborhood, so I'm just looking forward to hopefully being part of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone here to speak against this application? Is there anyone online, Madam Deputy Clerk?
We have no one else here online for this application.
All right,
Madam
I'll
Chair.
bring it to committee. Mr. Black.
Thank you, through your chair. Per the setback, is it pretty consistent with the neighborhood? Does it look like fairly short lots?
Yeah, they're relatively short lot, and the neighbor to what would be, I think, the west is their cottage is actually much closer to the shoreline than the proposed lot.
And Member Black.
No.
Sorry, Member Boyko.
There we go. Through you, Chair, Per, you mentioned Mike Brooks is asking that an environmental study be done. Is Mike Brooks a neighbor? Is he a member of an organization?
There was no address provided on his letter, so I don't know. It just.
He's sorry, this is Bruce Fraser speaking. Mike Brooks would be a neighbor directly adjacent to the vacant lot.
Okay, thank you. So he's not from an environmental organization or? Orca
No,
or
no,
something
no,
like that?
No, it's just signed Mike Brooks, the letter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Black.
To follow up, just with respect to a comment made about the size of the house, it still falls within the 20% lot coverage maximum for the property, so it's all within current bylaw.
Any other questions? So I'm going to ask committee to put a motion forward for these first three applications because the next application might take some time. So I'm looking for a mover. I have member Henry moving, member Black seconding, all in favor. That's carried. Thank you very much. So they've all been dealt with. Now we will move on to A 2724.
I believe, Madam Chair, that in the order of procedure, we'll let the applicant speak first on this application. His
You-
name is Evan Sugden from Biglieri Group. He should be in attendance virtually, I believe.
So you're not going to give us the purpose for the meeting for this application?
It's a minor variance application.
Yeah. Okay,
Oh, I can introduce this briefly if you'd
Yeah,
like. So
briefly.
this is an application for the relocation of Kawartha Stair and Rail from 1589 8th line to 1665 Shamong Road. The variances being requested are to add a workshop, manufacturing, processing, assembling, or fabrication plant or use to the list of the permitted uses for the C1-309 zone, as well as to add a warehouse use to that same C1-309 zone. And that's basically what the requested variances are for this application.
okay. So we have someone speaking in favor of the application is Evan Sugden.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. I would just caution you that you have 10 minutes to make your presentation. And if there are any questions, please stay online.
Thank you, Chair. In the lead up to the meeting, I was informed we may get a little bit of extra time, and I would like to request if 15 minutes would be okay. There's a few things that might take a bit longer to go through. Would that be okay?
The committee, what do you feel? Is 15 minutes okay? Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Yep. Can you still see?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I'm going to use my actual PowerPoint so I can have a laser pointer. My name is Evan Sugden. I'm an associate and professional land use planner with the Biglieri Group. I represent the owners of 1665 Chemong Road. The owners are also the franchise holders of the Chemong Home Hardware. The subject site is located just to the northwest of the city of Peterborough along Chemong Road, south of the lake, along a stretch of road that's identified in the official plan as a highway commercial corridor. This is a unique property in that the franchise owners, although not the landowners to the north of Home Hardware, have an arrangement whereby the two landowners share a driveway. And this is not a formal legal arrangement. This is a neighborly agreement, and this is a historic driveway that has been here for a long time. Both of the uses sort of share each other's property. Kawartha Stair and Rail is a existing business in the township. They've been there since 1989, so 35 years, and they've recently come into a partnership with Chemong Home Hardware for materials. What Kawartha Stair and Rail does is basically make everything to do with stairs except for the finishing. So it's a business of saws, jointers, thickness planers, and anything to do with carpentry, and that's all they do on site. So this is the subject site. You can see it here, the Home Hardware to the north, and then a rental company to the south. So this is the existing business you see here on the screen in blue, right here. The operations that they're proposing on the subject site include a retail showroom, a woodworking shop with no finishes, except for standard woodworking finishing like wood glue, office space, and a warehouse. Now, there's already an existing warehouse on the subject site. So when Per mentioned the type of use, that's the use that's proposed, that's defined in the zoning. The actual use proposed here is simply a woodworking shop. And you can see here, just using an app, and don't get me wrong, this is not a technical advanced data analysis for noise, but essentially what we've done is run a noise output reading beside the hopper here at the back, and essentially the noise that's produced is 70 to 60 decibels, which is in the kind of quiet to normal operation. The proposal here is essentially a minor variance. So there's two things that need to happen to facilitate this site. The land use permission for the wood shop and to legalize that existing warehouse that was approved through a site plan in 2018. And then after that, they still need to go through a site plan process. Two separate applications. One of them is related to land use appropriateness and compatibility, and the other is related to site function. This is a site plan that we've prepared to show you theoretically how the building can be designed on site. This is not a site plan that's before you today for approval. This is just to show you that the site can function. The original thought was that we would continue to use the existing driveway to the north that's shared with the home hardware owners, different from the franchisee holders. Now, they've submitted a comment back saying, we don't want to see this. However, we've had additional conversations with them. There was a bit of misunderstanding on their part that we would be changing their site, and things are starting to go the other direction now. But we're working on that. That's a matter that we believe can be addressed at the site plan stage. And fundamentally, this site can be developed with its own private driveway if need be. But we've also have a formal arrangement now with the other shared driveway already existing on site that's shared with the neighbor to the south. So I'll show you that at the end. This is the elevations. Essentially, it's just a doubling of the footprint of the existing warehouse. The requested variance is to allow for a woodworking shop and to legalize that existing warehouse. So it's a exception to section 415.1.2 of the Township of Selwyn zoning bylaw. No other variances are required to facilitate this. We don't need parking relief. We don't need setback relief. We don't need height relief. This is just to allow for a use. You can see here, this is the subject site in within the county's official plan, the in-force official plan that designates it highway commercial. Highway commercial is planned for a wide variety of uses. Now, official plans are not intended to be the be-all end-all of uses. New uses come and go that official plans don't contemplate. This particular official plan has a bunch of uses that are both commercial in nature and what I'm going to call quasi-employment. So there's similar uses like you would see in a general employment type designation, and I've underlined those here. Service shops, automobile service stations, anything that makes noise and odors, essentially. And that's really what's at stake here is we need to be able to be sure that the proposed use is not incompatible with the neighborhood that it's being proposed. Now, originally, when the pre-application consultation was proposed, township planning staff suggested that the appropriate way to bring this use on site is through an official plan and zoning amendment. We thought that was too robust of a process. The official plan, section 2.2, says that official plan amendments should only be required for significant departures from this vision. I don't believe that adding a wood shop beside another use that already has saws and forklifts and trucks is going to be a significant departure from this vision. And in fact, I think it's a perfect spot for it. Kawartha Stair and Rail needs that visibility along the highway. And that's exactly what this use is intended to have. Permits a wide range of commercial employment uses, intended for commercial uses that cater to and need to be highly visible from the public along a traveling public road. And that's what Kawartha Stair and Rail needs to continue their expansion. An official plan and zoning bylaw amendment to me was not the appropriate mechanism. And I would note that staff during the pre-application consultation meeting were not fundamentally opposed to the use, but rather the mechanism to bring the use into permission on the site. It's only in their recent report attached to this application that they've said it's not appropriate. And so we're before you today to show you how we feel that is. So it's zoned today as highway commercial with an exception. The exception is to permit an old paintball business that was once on the site. And then there's an environmental protection zone, which basically establishes an unevaluated buffer from this wetland feature. Again, just like the official plan, it permits a wide variety of commercial and sort of quasi-employment uses here. You see this along this section of Chemong Road. And in fact, you see a lot of uses that don't comply with the zoning. I've drawn another map here to show you one other thing. So the Orca has a regulated area on the subject site. This blue line on the south end here, this is the wetland boundary. This sort of corresponds to the township zoning. In 2018, when the warehouse was built, the township staff approved an environmental impact study, and same with Orca, that basically created the buffer. They evaluated the wetland and determined that the buffer would be 15 meters. You can see here, we're outside of the buffer and we're not within the wetland. This is probably the most important map, is that this is a contextual analysis. So you can see here we've got 20 different properties outlining all of the different kinds of uses that are found along this side of the road. We've got welding and fabrication shops, custom fabrication, self-storage, landscaping supply, masonry, sand and gravel suppliers, equipment rentals, home hardware. All of these uses are similar, if not more noxious, more noise emitting than what's proposed here today. But what's clear to me is that there's an eclectic and wide variety of uses that range from commercial to employment style uses along Chemong Road. In October 2020, the 2024 provincial planning statement came out, basically replacing the old PPS and sort of repealing the old growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So it helps streamline the planning framework and aims to support uses. Some of the key policies that were carried over still include lands that are in the rural areas. This is one of these lands. This is a rural area of the county. However, the proposal supports the rural character and essentially brownfield redevelopment. It also promotes economic diversification and competitiveness by bringing and supporting an existing business. Permitted uses are defined in the PPS, include a variety of things, including other rural land uses. Those other rural land uses are defined by the local municipality. And in this case, there's a variety of land uses. Minor variances don't need to demonstrate conformity with the official plan or compliance with the zoning bylaw. They need to demonstrate the general purpose and intent is met. And in this case, we are consistent with the PPS, but also I believe that we've met the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And so are we in keeping with the general purpose and intent of the official plan? I believe we do. The OP permits a wide range of commercial and employment or quasi-employment type uses, and we're fitting within those uses. The zoning bylaw permits similarly a wide range of commercial employment type uses. So the variance would give permission for just the woodworking shop and legalize that existing warehouse in keeping with that general purpose and intent. There is no zoning bylaw on earth that can provide the uses, the never-ending list of uses that can happen on a site. And they're intended to make sure that there's good land use compatibility. And I think the minor variance is the appropriate way to bring this particular use on site because it's a simple use and it's matching with the character of the area. And the official plan says we should only be doing amendments if there's significant departures from this vision. Is it desirable and appropriate for the use of land on this site? To me, it already has the context that's showing that there's an eclectic range of uses similar to this. To the north, there's saws. This site will have saws. This is essentially the extent of it. Is it minor in nature? To me, it is minor in nature. The proposal doesn't significantly deviate from the permitted uses in the highway commercial zone, as the woodworking shop and warehouse are consistent with the area's commercial and employment-based activities. To me, the proposed operations blend with the neighboring businesses, generating no adverse impact on the character or the function of the area. It's essentially infilling and making more efficient use of the site and supporting an existing business. This is a technical adjustment to me. that aligns with the zone's intent. And it doesn't circumvent the balance of what's required to make sure this site is appropriate. And that's done through the site plan, a separate application that we have to do. So to me, the minor variance is supporting an appropriate and fitting development for the site. It aligns with the intent of the county's official plan and township zoning bylaw. We've provided supporting studies to demonstrate how this can work, including a traffic impact study, a stormwater management plan, and we will be resubmitting a scope DIS to address township comments as part of the site plan stage, along with other things like archaeology. Orca has no initial concerns either. We met with them earlier. Given the lack of chemical and finishing on site, there's going to be no or minimal impact to the nearby protected area. And we have an ecologist that's lined up ready for the site plan stage. The variance would only facilitate this wood shop in bringing this existing business on site and then formalizes that existing warehouse. So to me, it meets the four acts or four tests of the Planning Act, and I am recommending that the committee approve. Accordingly, I'm suggesting that the committee put forward a motion to approve an alternative motion from what staff have recommended. And this is a motion that we've put forward, essentially that the application be approved, subject to the following conditions. And actually, we've agreed to, for the most part, with staff's suggested conditions with some minor tweaks. And this is what this alternative motion looks like. And so if you are to put forward a motion today to recommend approval with conditions, it would be the ones as per slide 21 here. So essentially approve with the following conditions. Township staff have suggested we get a building permit and a site plan. We're subjected to a 2-year clearance period for minor variances under the Planning Act. I believe that the site plan is what we should be getting. We will eventually have to get a building permit, yes, but we don't want to be restricted to that 2-year time frame within to get a site plan approved and then a building approved. That's likely what's going to happen, but we don't want the conditions to arbitrarily restrict. And we are asking for the committee to take a different stance from staff's side, but we believe that through the site plan process, a separate subsequent application, we can address all of the conditions and all of the comments that were originally put forward during the pre-consultation meeting. And I'll come back, and this is my last slide. We mentioned that the site, if we're going to have issues with the existing home hardware owners, and we think that's about to be resolved, that there has to be another way that we can show an entrance to the site. The county previously suggested we don't necessarily want a new entrance and lock a parcel in the official plan. That would be a contravention of that policy. Either way, we've come up with another option, which is another agreement with the owner to the south. They're willing to enter into an informal agreement and potentially even a long-term easement, which would use the existing southern driveway here, come up this way. We can still fit all of the servicing in. We can still fit all of the required parking, and the truck circulation can still work. We've had our traffic consultant look at this, and this is how the site would work if we can't get home hardware on board. But all of those things are matters that are to be dealt with as part of the site plan stage. And so we're asking for the committee today to consider our alternative motion rather than staff's motion to deny this application. We feel this is a fitting use for the site. It's good for the existing business for Kawartha Stair and Rail. It's good for home hardware, and it's appropriate for this particular stretch of road. And that's it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you very much. So Per, do we go to the questions now to him, or are you going to give your presentation?
I can do my presentation, I think would be appropriate. I'll just start off a little bit here just to clarify a point that Evan raised around like a 2-year period regarding the conditions to a variance. There is no such thing. Some townships do put an expiry date on minor variances. The Township of Selwyn does not. They travel with the property. They basically last indefinitely, provided the project remains the same. There is obviously, and I'm not sure if this is what Evan was referring to with regard to some committees of adjustment actually deal with severances, and there is a 2-year lapsing date to conditions of severance. those are not, that particular piece of legislation or regulation under the Planning Act is not applicable to minor variances in the same way. Obviously, our Committee of Adjustment, Evan, doesn't deal with severance applications. So I'll just clarify that point. With regard to my position on it, Evan alluded to it. He's likely read my report, but I am recommending denial of this application, and that we advised the applicant to proceed with the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment process as per the record of pre-consultation for this project on December 14th, 2023. I'll go through the report in a little bit of detail with regard to the 4 tests of a minor variance, but for the same reason that Evan is citing section 2.2 of the official plan as this not being a significant departure from the vision, I'm stating that it is a significant departure from the vision presented by the official plan. We're taking an existing industrial use and putting it into a commercial area. So we're looking to do by minor variance, changing the land use from commercial to industrial. And I believe that's a significant departure from the vision. But I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. As a bit of background, I think it's worth it. Normally, I would give the committee the Coles Notes versions on my reports, but I'm going to go into a bit more detail with this one, just for discussion purposes. So as a bit of background, Kawartha and Rail is currently located at 1589 8th line. They are currently zoned rural industrial. With at the time of the building permit in 1989, they were also designated under the official plan as industrial. The site today is designated environmental constraint area just due to proximity to a wetland to the south, but the industrial zoning remains. So the current use as a Kawartha and Rail is permitted at that site at 1589 8th line. The site plan agreement for the current building at 1665 Shimong Road was not for a warehouse, but rather a building supply outlet for the as a kitchen cabinet building supply center, including a showroom and an inventory storage area. The building permit has been issued for that, but it has not been closed, and there is no occupancy for that building, so it shouldn't be currently used. So we did hold a pre-consultation meeting for the proposed relocation of Kawartha and Rail back in December of 2023. The county and township recommended the OPA and ZBA process. We later had a meeting with Evan and Scott McFadden in April of 2024, asking us to consider the minor variance process, where I turned that down. I didn't feel it was appropriate at that time and provided my opinion to that effect. I'll just say in terms of process wise, there was some recommendations as to reports required in support of the OPA and ZBA. Those were submitted minus the archaeological assessment for the variance. However, the variance process does not include a process for evaluating those technical reports in advance of consideration by the approval authority, in this case, the Committee of Adjustment. Those are more considered when we do more large scale projects through the OPA ZBA process, where we would review those and have a peer review prior to bringing it forth to a public hearing or public meeting. So regardless of these comments, we're here today. Bigley Area Group has obviously has their position that they feel that the minor variance process is appropriate, and there's obviously they have the ability to apply for the minor variance as they see fit. As I mentioned, the purpose of the application is to add both a workshop, manufacturing, processing, assembling, or fabrication plant use to the list of the permitted uses in the C1309 zone, as well as to add a warehouse use to the site. There's an existing, the existing building is about 620 square meters, and the proposed addition is about 635 square meters. So with regard to the 4 tests of the minor variance, is the general intent and purpose of the township's official plan met? The way I see it, it is not. The general intent and purpose of the township's official plan is to provide a vision to guide future development within the township, including detailed policies and land use designations to achieve desired development goals. The correct method of evaluating compatibility is not against existing uses in the area, but to the vision presented by the official plan. There is a rural industrial area specifically designated for this type of use on County Road 19, just to the east of this highway commercial area on Chemung Road. So again, and like I said, within that rural industrial designation and rural industrial zoning, we have specific permissions for the type of use being proposed. Again, with the general intent of the purpose of the township zoning bylaw being met, the intent of the purpose of the zoning bylaw is to implement the vision in the official plan through site-specific zoning regulation. These are applicable law under the Ontario Building Code Act, right? So because they don't implement the vision in the official plan, neither do they meet the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, in my opinion. So then evaluated against the current policies effective in the official plan and zoning bylaw, is the development or use appropriate for the land, building, or structure? It is not when you evaluate it against the current designation of zoning of the lands. So for all those reasons, as I stated above, the variance proposed is not minded. It's major, and it should be going through official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment. I do agree with Evan that it is a process issue, not generally opposed to bringing this forward through the correct process through OPA and ZBA, but it is a departure from the vision and it needs to be addressed as such, in my opinion. In terms of comments that we've received comments of generally no concern from the Conservation Authority. County Public Works is stating, of course, that they'll have further comments at site plan control stage, but at this land use stage, the County Public Works is not concerned. Orca, the Conservation Authority, saying obviously permits will be required from the Conservation Authority. They did mention about the comments that just received today, Evan, that the 15-meter setback that Evan was speaking to from the wetland needs to be maintained. And obviously they'll have review of the stormwater management plan at site plan control stage. Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board has no concern, and obviously we've addressed, or Evan has raised the comments received from Home Hardware Stores Limited and in regard to no shared access via 1699 Chemung Road, which is the property to the north. And those are my comments.
All right, thank you very much. So, is there anyone else that is, I'm going to be bringing it to committee for questions, but I'm following the process. So is there anyone else here online that is in favor of this application? Madam Deputy Clerk.
Madam Chair, we have a Terry Jenkins online. I'm not sure if he's wanting to speak to the application or not. Maybe we can just give him a minute. Yeah. Terry?
It's actually Mike Kingnan, who my dad, Randy, and Terry are the owners of the adjacent property and also of the Chemung Home Hardware Building Center. For some reason, my chat wouldn't work. They're not able to be here today, so I'm just kind of up in the boardroom on Terry's computer watching the meeting.
Okay, did you have any comment that you wanted to make with regards to this application?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that is online that is in favor of this application, Madam Deputy Clerk?
There's no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
For or against?
For or against.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I will bring it to committee for questions of either Per or Evan. So, Member Black.
Thank you to Chair Senis. Thanks for the presentation, Evan, and your presentation as well, Per. This is a challenging one. You know, the C1 zoning and the vision around C1 zoning. I don't know how long ago it was created when the thought of what Chemung Road might be down the road, Lansdowne Street vision, but that clearly hasn't happened on that road. There hasn't been a lot of activity other than new storage units built along there. And I go back to 1986 when I opened my first business behind the Wood Arts building, which was a full scale woodworking shop. I don't know what the zoning there was, and I'm probably saying that the zoning wasn't there for what we were using the building for probably either for a few years. So there is a long history of non-compliant, grandfathered in type uses along there, and I know that's not a reason to not follow today's plans, but I just wonder whether, you know, the C1 zoning needs to be reviewed to see what types of businesses that don't require large amounts of water and sewers would actually build on that road. So that's one of my concerns, is that it doesn't conform, but should it conform based on our experience over the last 50 years along Chemung Road. The other thoughts I had around, it was approved for a kitchen cabinet business in the past with storage for flat box items. So would that not be considered a warehousing feature for that particular application?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would suggest that it's not. Warehouse use is an independent use for future just redistribution to a retail center, right? This is more of a storage area for an established storefront. So the use is different in nature than a dedicated warehouse building.
Okay. Follow-up question.
Yes.
My understanding of this type of business, and I've had stairs built for houses in the past, and the actual manufacturing is really just the frame of the stairs. All the other products that they use, the treads, the handrails, the spindles, they're all pre-made. They're not built, they're not making those items in this warehouse. They're basically doing the sawtooth for the stairs and landing, basically, I think, pre-built steps, that sort of thing, cutting them to size maybe, but most of the actual assembly and finishing is done on site. So the amount of woodworking that goes on back there, I think, might be overestimated how much the stair is actually completed. So I do not understand that it's not a use, but again, I just go back to what other kinds of businesses are looking to work on that strip of property. We haven't seen, like I said, a lot of activity that would meet the current official plan C1 zoning. So I just don't know what else would go there other than this type of business, which would have a retail piece as well, selling handrails and spindles and steps and stuff like that are pre-manufactured for sale. So just my comments.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councillor Boyko. Oh, sorry, Member Boyko.
Right, member. Thank you, through you, Chair. Per, your recommendation is that the applicant go through an official plan amendment. I wonder if you could guess for us, what would be the time that it would take to go through that process, and what would be the approximate cost to the applicant to go through a process that would see the official plan amended?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Difficult to say. In terms of costs numbers, I don't have a schedule. There would obviously be additional costs through the county through the official plan amendment process, in addition to township fees for the zoning amendment. In terms of overall peer review that's required for technical reports, though, that would be sort of it wouldn't be anything additional in this case, because the site plan control stage is still pending.
Right.
So the peer review process would have to be completed regardless. So there may be some additional fees just because of the county approval. In terms of timeline, again, it's difficult to say with a peer review process, because we would require that up front before we go to public meeting for a zoning amendment. So that'll be the bulk load of the time, but in terms of actual decision making, it'd be limited. Like the combined under the Planning Act for combined OPA, ZBA, the timeline prescribed is 120 days.
Okay, so should we ask that the OP amendment be done, the whole process could be completed in 120 days. We're not talking years. That's the question that I'm asking.
Yeah, so through you, Matt, I'm just saying the prescribed timeline is that, and it's not, for our process, the way we manage it now, we don't accept the complete application until the peer review is completed regardless. So we would be in the timeline no problem. The county handles it a little different, but because they're coordinating with us, I don't foresee a problem in completing the process in 120 days in terms of public meeting and decision, because the peer review process would be completed up front. So you'd have to add the peer review process plus the 120 days.
Right. So the answer to my question is it would take a few years for this to be done, and it would cost the applicant a lot of money.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I understand that. Second question, if you could, would you be involved with this? Is this the type of thing that you would, and I'm not asking you to presuppose the process or the peer review or anything else, but is this an OP amendment that you would support?
And
And again, if you don't wish to say at this point, that's fine.
In principle, I would say there's nothing at the pre-consultation meeting from either the township or the county that would put like the brakes on that process from a planning department perspective. So what it essentially does is alters the vision for the development of that corridor. So the site would become an industrial site rather than a commercial site,
Right.
which then would facilitate the process. So I mean, barring that there's something under the technical review, engineering wise, environmental wise,
Yeah.
that would come up. I don't foresee an issue as Evan has outlined. There is sort of that other rural land use category for permissions for rural land uses, right, under the PPS.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just before we move on, Madam Chair, Evan just has his hand up. He'd like to comment, please.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand, Adam. Sorry,
Through the-
didn't see your
Through the
hand.
chair, no problem, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. I wanted to just help clarify a couple of answers to that question from my experience, having done developments all over Ontario for official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. So this is there's a couple of things here. So the number one is it would probably take at least 1 year, if not more, to do just the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment. Not once have I seen a municipality make a decision within the 120-day timeframe. In addition, the reporting requirement that we would need to do is quite a bit more robust to accommodate an official plan amendment. And secondly, it takes the decision on the application out of the local municipality's hands and places it with the county. And although the county typically listens to the township, from our understanding, then you have an entirely different set of planner in involvement at the county level. The county would need to approve that official plan because it's their official plan we're amending. Then back to the township for the zoning. So then you're getting into county involvement, and the county is going to be reviewing it against the policy framework, as well as at the township level. PAIR would be reviewing it at the zoning amendment. So there's just a bit of more of a nuanced process there that's going to take quite a bit longer. Ultimately, I would also say that, PAIR has put forward, he's worried about that there's no time to review studies. All of the studies that support this application can still be asked for as part of that site plan process, which we have to do anyways. So we're not trying to circumvent everything. We're just trying to take a mechanism that's available to the Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act and help expedite this process as best we can, while still giving you all of the information through the site planning process to help inform that decision. If we can't get a site plan approval, then the minor variance can't be implemented, because you can impose that as a condition. And that's what we're suggesting. And your question to PAIR about can you support it, I think it's clear today in his report that he doesn't feel this use is appropriate. That was one of the tests of the variance. And so why are we going to go back to the official plan process when we already know what the outcome will be? I can't imagine the supporting studies are going to suggest a difference in terms of land use appropriateness. Those are technical matters on, the wetland buffer and archaeology. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. PAIR.
Yeah, I'm just gonna clarify a little bit there, Evan. I'm evaluating this from the four tests of a minor variance perspective. So the test of whether it's appropriate and desirable is evaluated against the currently applicable official plan designation and zoning. So obviously this use doesn't fit within those categories, and therefore it is not desirable and appropriate from a minor variance standpoint. That does not mean that I can't support the process through an official plan amendment, which then puts the appropriate land use designation, which then allows us to put an industrial zoning on the lands as opposed to commercial zoning on the property. We have to be consistent with our official plan with regard to zoning. We can't, barring one exception, I'll talk about the non-conforming uses a little bit. So there is a provision in our official plan that allows us to recognize through zoning longstanding industrial uses that are in the site. For example, the cement plant, it's been there since like the 50s. So we have site-specific zoning for that. We also have Youngs Point construction that was put in place in the 70s. So we have site-specific industrial zoning for that. It's still considered a commercial zone, but under that site-specific commercial zone, it allows for an industrial use of a contractor's yard. So this is a new use. It's not a use that's been in place for 30, 40, 50 years. So for new uses, you have to be consistent with the official plan in order to put industrial zoning on the property.
So just to clarify for me, you are not saying that you are not in favor of the use. It's just the way it's being going about it.
That's correct.
That's what you're
I think
saying.
I've said that a
Okay.
couple of times, but that is correct.
Okay, but-
It's
okay.
process related.
Yeah.
I'm evaluating this as a minor variance, and in my opinion, this is not a minor variance.
I hear you loud and clear. Member Poulos.
Thank you through you. This is not meant to be a silly question, but no one's talked about beaver tails that's on that property right now. And I'm just wondering what the impact is. Like, will that, because it's a local business now or a local employment center, let's say, are they going to be moved off or like, how are they going to be impacted? Because that's part of your argument here. And I'm just trying to figure that in the picture.
Evan, can you answer that?
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, that's a great question. And the intent is to keep beaver tails. It's a transient business, meaning that the business physicality, the actual trailer that it's in, can be picked up and moved. And so through the site planning process, we can show where that would end up somewhere along the existing frontage if need be. You know, I'm not sure if this is maybe a bylaw issue for transient sort of food truck type uses, but it's something that we can certainly work out as part of the site plan. The intent is to keep beaver tails. This is an existing partnership that Wayne and Randy, the applicants and owners of the site, enjoy.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Member Henry, do you have any questions? No? Member Black.
Thank you. Thank you through your chair. You know, I think the notion that it would go through official plan amendment and could have support from the township on that. But that would take 2 years versus getting support for a minor variance application today that gets the buildings built and people to work. You know, the end result is the same. The difference is it's going to take 2 more years to go through OP and zoning to end up with the same result. So that concerns me, given all of the need for jobs and those sorts of things in the township, and to get some development going in the township. So my question to Per is, you put in some conditions if committee decided to support, which is unusual. Again, you put that in your package to the board, to committee. The applicant is suggested a slightly different, well, the support obviously in that part of the motion, but also revise some of the conditions based on your base document of conditions that you put forward if we were to support the application. Do you have any concerns with any of the changes that they've made to their proposed revised conditions if it's approved by committee?
Yeah, through you, Madam. I prefer to leave them the way we're suggesting. Like I said, there's no issue with. I think Evan's concern is expiry of those conditions, and that's why the crux of what his changes are to reflect that, you know, we don't expire the minor variance conditions. They don't. I would also say, in addition, that there's sufficient administrative ability to coordinate the site plan approval and the variance conditions simultaneously. One does not happen before the other. However, the site plan and minor variance conditions certainly need to be met before building permits are issued, right? So there's sufficient overlap. There's not going to be additional time associated with satisfying the minor variance conditions because they'll be addressed at site plan control stage, for example.
Okay, thank you. He's got his hand up.
Yes, Evan.
Through the chair, thank you. And it was positive to hear that the township doesn't impose a time frame. I'm used to municipalities imposing a 2-year time frame that matches with the consent time frame in a lot of instances. And I think we wouldn't have an issue with any of the conditions as Per has framed them, if the minor variance is not set with an expiry date. Essentially, that was our concern, was just being able to work through the process to clear the conditions. And if there's no time frame, then there's no concern.
Thank you. Member Colas? No? Member Henry?
Thank you through your chair. Per, we've had a couple years of working together and we've always supported the thinking here. One of the things that does concern me though is that an individual can come in from outside our community and present a wonderful resume, and we're allowed to make some exceptions to things here. However, having to come in and completely rewrite and change everything you did is a little heavy-handed in my opinion. And as the committee, we might have to really take a good look at this and consider the midline of what we're willing to move on, but we all still have to support township staff in moving forward and how we do this. It's a big shit sandwich and we're going to have to take a bite, I think. Turd sandwich, sorry.
Was that a question or a comment? Just a comment? Yeah,
Comment.
okay. Member Black.
So Chair, if you're ready to move on a motion at this point,
There are no other questions?
well, I would move that the minor variance application A 27-24 for 1665 Shamong Road requesting relief from section 4.15.1.2 of the zoning bylaw 2009-021 as amended to permit a woodworking shop and a warehouse on site to facilitate the relocation and expansion of a fourth stair and rail be approved, subject to following conditions, and I would use Per's conditions for that.
Right? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henry, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So,
Thank you, Chair and Committee. Have a nice day.
thank you. We have minutes of the Committee of Adjustment meeting of October the 22nd, 2024. Can I have someone move them, please? Councillor Member Koulis and Member Boyko, all in favor? That's carried. And a motion to adjourn this meeting to the next meeting of December the 10th. Member Henry and Member Black, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we will start our council meeting. Give us 2 minutes. Good afternoon. This regular council meeting of Tuesday, November the 26th, 2024 will come to order for the Township of Selwyn. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Please observe a moment of silence so that council, staff, and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we will look at our minutes for our last meeting, November the 12th, 2024. Are there any errors or omissions? If not, can I have someone move the minutes? Councillor Boyko, seconded by Councillor Koulis, all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. Is there any discussion out of the minutes? Seeing none, we will first go to Adam, who's going to make a couple of staff introductions. Or maybe one.
Good afternoon, through you, Madam Mayor. Just like to welcome and introduce Nick Tucson. Nick is our new wastewater operator for the Village of Lakefield. Well, Woodland Acres, Selwyn. Nick comes from us from the municipality of Port Hope, where he was a water distribution and treatment operator. He previously worked for Clearford Waterworks as a private system operator, operating small systems, and Durham Region at the Bowmanville Water Treatment Plant. Nick's a Fleming graduate with an advanced water systems operator technician diploma, as well as his Class 2 water treatment and Class 2 water distribution licenses. Just like to welcome Nick.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. I'm just recently going to be moving into the area this Wednesday, actually, because before I was in Coburg, so it's much better to have the shorter commute if I'm going to be working here long term. My wife, Roxanne, works for the Peterborough Public Health Office as a public health nurse, and we just had a baby boy named George August 31st, and he's 14 pounds already. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
well, welcome, and we're happy to have you with us and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. We have Peter Simisco of Watson and Associates that's going to be talking to us about development charges. Sorry for the delay. We had a committee of adjustment meeting that went over a little bit.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So let me just share my screen. Sorry, just give me a moment to get set up. We have a few presentation slides to walk through. And I believe that should be live on the screen now.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for the confirmation. So good afternoon, everyone. As council might recall, the township passed new development charge bylaws on August 8th of last year, 2023. And those development charge bylaws came into effect on September 12th of 2023. Since those development charge bylaws came into effect, the Development Charges Act was amended, and the legislative changes have allowed for certain additional costs to be recovered through development charges. And so the purpose of our presentation today is to provide an overview of the changes and the resultant amendments to the township's development charges bylaws that are being proposed. So firstly, in terms of the legislative changes, Bill 185, or the Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act, came into force on June 6th, 2024. And Bill 185 made several changes to the Development Charges Act. And those changes included the removal of a mandatory phase-in period for development charge bylaws. At the time when the township's current development charge bylaws were approved by council, the development charge rates had to be phased in over a period of 5 years, with the development charge in the first year being a maximum of 80% of the full calculated rates, and then increasing 5 percentage points annually each year after that. So full rates wouldn't have been in effect until 5 years into the bylaw's life. So that's been removed through Bill 185. Another change was the reinstatement of growth-related studies as an eligible capital cost for inclusion in the calculation of the development charge. And then finally, there was also a technical change which reduced the time limit on the development charge freeze that's applicable to developments proceeding through a site plan or a zoning bylaw amendment process. So the changes that were made through Bill 185 also allow municipalities to follow a more streamlined process when passing and amending development charge bylaws to include the cost of studies and making the corresponding changes to the development charge rates. And that streamlined process for undertaking a development charge bylaw amendment does not require the preparation of a formal development charges background study. It does not require the usual public consultation process in terms of a statutory public meeting. And these amending bylaws cannot be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, municipalities were given a 6-month timeframe to take advantage of that streamlined process, and that 6-month window will be up on December 6th. So in response to the legislative changes, particularly with the ability to once again include growth-related studies in the calculation of the development charge, we worked with township staff to identify the studies that are planned over the forecast horizon. And these are studies that help to inform the future capital needs that may arise due to development. The full list of studies is provided in the table on slide 3 here. And what is shown on the right-hand side of the table are the services to which each study relates. There are also several studies which don't pertain exclusively to any one service area, and these are captured in a class of service that's referred to as growth-related studies. And so in total, the gross capital costs of these studies total approximately $683,000. With approximately $350,000 of that making its way into the calculation of the development charge after accounting for certain deductions such as benefits to the existing population, benefit to services outside of the scope of the development charge, and also deducting existing reserve fund balances from prior development charges that were collected towards these study costs. So on slide 4 here, we have the full updated schedule of development charge rates for different types of development and also broken out by service area. Perhaps more informative are the comparison charts that are provided on the next 2 slides. So I'll shift over to those. So firstly, on the slide here, we have the comparison of the development charges that are currently in effect for a single detached house, and then comparing them to the calculated development charges with the inclusion of these study costs. And the per unit increase to the rates are highlighted in the last column of the table. So in total, in areas outside of Lakefield South, the development charge for a single detached house would increase by $296. That represents about a 5% increase to the charges that are currently in effect. And for development within Lakefield South, the development charge for a single detached house would increase by $388 per unit, which represents about a 2% increase to the rates that are currently in effect in that area. So then similarly, on the next slide here, we have a comparison of the development charges currently in effect for non-residential development. These are on the basis of per square foot of gross floor area. And again, comparing them to the calculated development charges with the inclusion of studies. And again, the increase to the rates are highlighted in the last column of the table. And so in total, in areas outside of Lakefield South, the development charge per square foot of non-residential development would increase by 14 cents per square foot, which represents a 5% increase. And for development in Lakefield South, the development charge per square foot of non-residential development would increase by 19 cents per square foot, which corresponds to about a 2% increase relative to the charges currently in effect. So that summarizes the effects of the proposed development charge bylaw amendments. And then that brings us to the conclusion. And just in terms of next steps, it is just the consideration of adoption of the amending development charge bylaws to put these new rates into effect. And of course, if there are any questions from council, I would be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. And I know we have to do this, but every time we put an additional cost, it just pushes affordable housing that much further away from anyone ever being able to afford a house. But I know that it's a necessary evil. And so are there any questions for our presenter? We have a recommendation in front of us today of someone that will move it, please. Councillor Boyko, seconded by Councillor Henry. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Too. And now we are going to be hearing from Anand Desai from Monteith Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you again. And today I am here to present the final recreation services and the strategic plan. So it's been, again, a bit of a journey over the past few months, but really appreciated, before I again get into the slides, all of the efforts of your community, your staff, you as council. So let's go. Thank you, Tanya. It's not clicking. Well, let's do that way. So as you know, a lot of work has gone into this plan, a lot of input from many different people, and really has culminated into the document, the recommendations that are before you. Today's intent is not to repeat the same presentation as was given back in October, or in terms of more of the comprehensive recommendations. The focus is more about what we heard over the last few weeks as we worked to finalize the draft. But really, you know, since the spring, as I mentioned, a number of tasks have been undertaken, both research, consultation, and analysis. Oh, there, the clicker worked. So you know, as you'll recall, a number of you were at the open house back a few weeks ago. We had 25 people sign in. I suspect there were some folks that were also in attendance that might not have signed in. Certainly the entire 2+ hours was spent in good conversation on a range of topics, both pertaining to the recreation plan, but to the strategic plan as well. We received 15 written submissions. And generally the response was positive. I think people generally felt that they were engaged through the process, appreciated that you know, some of their feedback was heard. You know, there were, again, people reiterating certain needs around transportation, snow removal, the importance of climate change, you know, some, you know, very global to very local type of topics, which is to be expected, and is certainly understood. So we took that feedback, and from a strategic plan perspective, really there was broad support again expressed for the draft, as was posted as well on Speak Up Selwyn and other means. So really resulting in some minor editorial revisions. The final draft strat plan is included in your council package today, with the recommendation that again, council approve that document dated as of November 26th. And certainly though, before that, between myself and township staff, happy to address any questions there. There were a couple of changes to the recreation services plan. We heard a lot of feedback of that expressed with respect to Isabel Morris Park, specifically how we can integrate more support for community level festivals and special events. And so we just revised the recommendation slightly in a manner that talks about potentially, I guess, defining a more community event space with your community, understanding that it would be something that would not just be for one particular festival or event, but be able to enable a wide range, again, of community level uses and programs in that space. Support for age-friendly community efforts and the age-friendly community action plan. That was something that was added in text. As well, we heard from folks, you as a township, I think, do a good job of meeting the needs of a wide range of age groups through your spaces, which in turn allow your community organizations. But some felt, we need to reinforce, especially with your, I guess, aging population, for the importance of healthy aging in place. We wanted to tie in and align our document with things like the age-friendly Peterborough Community Action Plan. So I think fairly, strong, I guess, support for a number of other aspects of that rec services plan. Trails in particular, we heard a lot of feedback that evening around what was conceptualized. Certainly the next step is implementation for all of these. And then as we just heard, documents like this, the recreation services plan in particular, can help inform your growth related studies and other endeavors. The strategic plan, hopefully provides council with strong, a basis for governance and to make those types of decisions. But it bears noting, by accepting or approving the rec services plan, the strategic plan, you are not bound necessarily to, implementing all of those in these documents. Certainly township staff will now have rationale to build the business case, where needed, to bring more information to you as council to deliberate individual recommendations moving forward. But again, speaking in terms of the rec services plan, my personal feeling, perhaps you feel the same way, is that we think it's a fairly fiscally responsible plan in terms of there isn't, I feel we're delivering a lot of value for the dollar that we are expending without a lot of big ticket items necessarily. So, again, I think that's, again, kudos to this township, to your community, and all of you who have worked so hard to position yourselves, to ready yourselves for that future. Timing, of course, though, we have identified general timeframes in the recreation services plan. If we say something is, maybe we need it in 5 years, but you have a grant that's successful next year, there's nothing that stops you from saying, let's accelerate. So same thing. If there are other priorities, though, something that is identified as a more short-term need, you as council may make a decision to, perhaps push that into the future, as you balance, again, the different needs of your community. And so ultimately, this is these are frameworks, these are blueprints or roadmaps. We've appreciated, again, all our time in this community, and are happy to take any questions prior to you making any decisions.
Thank you very much, Anand, and I want to thank you and council and staff for all the work that has been put in. We certainly did have a lot of public process throughout the whole exercise. We don't always anticipate some emergency things that come up that won't be a part of this, but it does set us up so that we aren't reactionary. We have a roadmap in place as to, you know, which way we can go into the future. So it's a good thing. I have one question of staff. There's on the first page that shows the vision, purpose, values, and goals. I think it would be a good idea if council agrees that we have this one page put up in various places in the township, such as our libraries, in our council chambers, at our arenas, so that the public can see what our vision, purpose, values, and goals are. And I guess, of course, the goals that we're showing here have a little bit different wording than what we had in the past. And this does form part of our decision-making when you bring reports forward, correct?
Yeah, for sure. So we will continue to refer to our strat plan and the goals in the strat plan with each report that we bring forward. The idea of having, you know, a little display board put up that we could place in our different facilities. I like that idea. I think we can get that. We've got some staff in Angie's department who could pretty up a nice design for us pretty quickly, and we can get that done. So,
okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah. And if I could I'd just like to say thanks
Absolutely.
to Onit as well, Onit and your team. As always, you've done a great job for us. It's been great to work with you. You're here with your cast on and your cane. Yeah. So you went through a little bit of stuff with this project, as we normally do. But again, I think just, you know, we've worked a lot with your firm and your genuine interest in the community, which you display all the time, and just the knowledge that you've built up over time. It serves us well. And we appreciate all of your work and your time. And it was a pleasure to work with you again. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Blanc.
Thank you, through Mayor Sinas. Yes, and then thank you for all the hard work, and maybe you'll come and move here at some point.
You never know. It's the seeds planted.
Spend time.
Seeds are planted. You know, strategic plans are often very boring and hard to get through and those sorts of things. But I think what we've done in the last year has been very appropriate. Times are changing. You know, a lot of things are changing, particularly since COVID. So I think it was the right time. I believe the report was really well done. You know, a couple of the things that stand out to me are the issues around trails. Number 1 and number 5 priority. There's 5 different recommendations here around taking a look at how we link those trails between communities. We link the trails within communities. And you know, getting an inventory on which trails might support maintenance, year-round maintenance, that sort of thing. So I think those are important things that came out of the public meetings and the recommendations from residents. So I know all things can't be done over a short period of time, but I think the public has spoken that it's a priority that trails are used and need to be more of a focus in the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you. No other comments. We do have a recommendation in front of us that the Township of Selwyn Corporate Strategic Plan and 2024 Recreation Services Plan dated November the 26th, 2024 be approved. And as someone move that, Councillor Boyko and Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Bye.
All right, we have David Forsey of Arcadis Professional Services on the line. Mr. Arcadis, you're going to be talking to us about service delivery review for the link.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can I just confirm that you can see the slides on the screen?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of Council. As you know, the Link is a pilot public transportation service that has been serving the township and the Curve Lake First Nation since 2021. At present, this service is fully funded by the provincial government and other third parties, but provincial grants are slated to expire in March of 2026. Without a commitment of local funding from the township, the Link will not be able to continue operations. This presentation summarizes our work to review the Link, including the value it delivers to customers, ridership trends, performance relative to peers, and how it is funded, with a view to identifying a path to transitioning the Link to a permanent service for township residents. But first, some background about the service. The link's been in operation since May of 2021 through an agreement with Peterborough Transit, who supply the vehicles and drivers required in exchange for a fee per hour for service. Peterborough Transit operates the service using its standard 40-foot buses and integrates the link with its local route network at Trent University. As I noted in my introduction, the link is funded by a provincial initiative known as the Community Transportation Grant, which is a temporary provincial funding program that eliminates the need for any local tax-supported funding. Operating funding is further supplemented by contributions from Trent University and Fleming College. As you'll see in a minute, ridership has grown rapidly since service inception, with ridership more than doubling each year of operation to date. There are two routes. Route 31, which is shown in red, serves Curve Lake, Lakefield, Trent University, and has 11 daily one-way trips. And Route 32, which is in blue, serves Ennismore, Bridge North, and Trent University with 10 daily one-way trips. And finally, riders can choose from a variety of fare products when they ride, ranging from $8 for a one-way single ride fare to $150 monthly for an unlimited pass. The reason why we were hired is to complete a third-party review of the link and provide recommendations for how it could be operated on a permanent and sustainable basis after the expiry of provincial funding. To this end, our review consisted of several components. We conducted a technical review of the two routes, including where they serve, their ridership, and identified changes that we believe would improve their performance. We assessed the operating arrangement with Peterborough Transit and evaluated whether it was delivering the best value to the township. We investigated whether alternative sources of funding could be put to use to help operate the service. We looked into ways to capitalize on the success of the system's ridership to build long-term revenue from fares. And finally, we identified a high-level financial plan that would guide the service's transition from a pilot to a permanent public service. The starting point for this work is the establishment of strategic objectives that serve to guide the direction of our review. Unlike designing a sewer system or a power grid, there are no hard engineering standards that we can use to determine how a transit service should meet the needs of a community. Those decisions are best guided by the community's priorities and how it wants to serve its residents and taxpayers. In collaboration with staff and informed by the township's broader priorities, we established 3 strategic objectives for the study. First, financial sustainability. Any permanent transit solution needed to be affordable to the township's taxpayers, and therefore the amount of service provided needs to be appropriately scaled. The township will also seek out alternative funding sources if and where available. Next, the service design itself should be optimized to maximize the amount of riders that can be attracted by investigating alternative routing throughout the township. And finally, the service should be flexible in its ability to be expanded in the future, either by providing new service at different times of day or by being expanded to new locations within the township or beyond. And this is much seen as a longer-term objective beyond the immediate needs of the system. So the first thing I want to highlight from our review is the trend in ridership growth over time. Annual ridership has more than doubled in each year of operation, reaching more than 18,000 individual rides in 2023, with 2024 trending well above that number. This is illustrated in the chart at the bottom of the slide, which shows the total rides in the system for each year of operation, organized by month. 2021 ridership is shown in light green, 2022 in dark blue, 2023 in dark green, and 2024 in yellow. In addition to showing the rapid increase in ridership on the link, the chart also highlights seasonal ridership patterns, with the highest ridership generally occurring in the early spring and mid-fall months. This corresponds to times when most students are in session and traveling to class, and indeed the majority of the link's riders are students. However, the high number of student riders has been instrumental to providing a high quality of service for all residents of the township. The popularity of the service among students has attracted predictable funding from Peterborough's 2 major post-secondary schools, which in turn has enabled more service to be put on the road than would otherwise have been possible. In effect, high student ridership is enabling higher quality service to be made available for all township residents, not just students. Among general riders that are not post-secondary students, we found evidence in fare payment data of regular usage, with the 2 most common fare types purchased being monthly passes and 10 ride passes. This suggests a loyal rider base and supports anecdotal evidence that we collected of riders using the service to access work in Lakefield, Peterborough, and elsewhere in the township. We also conducted a review across several other dimensions of the service, the takeaways from which are summarized on this slide. First, in comparison to peers, total ridership on the link is quite high, particularly when you consider the size of the township. So to illustrate, the average peer transit system that we reviewed had ridership numbers about 10% lower than the link, but had an average population about 4 times higher. Second, as I mentioned on the last slide, high student ridership is something that can be capitalized to benefit everybody in the township. Funding agreements with post-secondary institutions are a way to provide more and better transit service than would otherwise be affordable without the high number of students. Next, we found that despite the use of large buses, the operation of the link by Peterborough Transit is an extremely efficient and effective way to deliver the service. Based on our experience working with private sector transit operators, the hourly rate being paid to the city is comparable, if not lower, than what would be achievable by a private operator. This is because the city is able to work trips to the township in between trips within its urban service area using vehicles that it has already in service, rather than having to perpetually dedicate 1 or 2 new vehicles to the link at all times. This had the added benefit of further integrating the link into the rest of the Peterborough transit system and opens up destinations throughout the city. We also heard through our engagement program that residents of the township generally support the service. For example, nearly 80% of respondents to our first public survey stated that they would support consistent or increased transit service, even if it meant that taxes would need to be increased to support it. And on that last point, one of the most important conclusions from our review is that some sort of local funding support will be necessary in order to sustain service upon expiry of the community transportation grant. Even with higher fares, transit is not something that makes money and must rely on local operating funding to work. So based on the findings of our review, we prepared a new service concept for the link that would allow the township to sustain the operation of the service at a scalable level of investment, while also dedicating resources to the parts of the township that are most likely to generate the highest levels of ridership. This new concept would maintain 2 routes, but these routes would be slightly altered to better match demand. The biggest change is that the 2 routes would serve a common trunk between Lakefield and Trent University. This is an area of the township that has the highest potential ridership, and it's beneficial to increase service here to attract new riders and offer more choice and flexibility to existing riders. The second major change is a new connection between Bridgenorth and Lakefield, providing better access to local services, amenities, and recreation that is not currently possible on the service. And the third large change would be the truncation of Route 32 at Bridgenorth, removing service from Ennismore. In our assessment, we found that the ridership potential of service in Ennismore is low, particularly in relation to the additional cost in providing service there. So this slide provides some of the key benefits associated with the new concept. First, the new concept provides a comparable amount of service to what is being provided today, meaning that the cost to operate the network would be comparable to what it is today. This cost can easily be scaled in line with available funding by increasing or decreasing the number of daily trips on each route. Along those same lines, the areas served are generally similar to today. This means that service would not be removed for many people that currently rely upon it. However, as I noted in my last slide, the high ridership corridor between Lakefield and Trent would see more service compared to today, which would generate additional ridership and fare revenue and benefit existing riders in the corridor. And finally, adding a connection between Bridgenorth and Lakefield responds to requests that we heard directly from the community to improve transportation options between these 2 communities. However, the preferred concept that I showed on the last 2 slides was not the only option that we considered. We looked at many different ways of changing, scaling, and delivering the service before arriving at our recommendation. We considered removing service from Bridgenorth entirely and instead focusing all service on the higher ridership corridor between Trent and Curve Lake. However, this would remove critical lifeline connections, such as groceries and medical facilities, to a number of current riders in Bridgenorth. We also considered changes to existing Peterborough transit routes that would serve certain high ridership developments and communities within the township, but this was deemed to be operationally infeasible by Peterborough Transit. We considered the use of smaller buses to reduce costs and concluded that this would actually cost more money to operate because of the existing arrangement with Peterborough Transit and the efficiency of working in that way. Along similar lines, transitioning to a model in which service is only provided on demand or on request would not result in operating savings because it would require a dedicated bus or buses to provide the service. This would be less efficient than the current model and also not easily serve travel patterns in the township. We also looked into the potential of extending service into neighboring municipalities as a method of offsetting operating costs, and concluded that this would invariably result in a greater cost to the township because of the additional service that would have to be added within the township just to provide access to its neighbors. And finally, we also investigated the feasibility of providing a transit connection between Bridgenorth and Peterborough via Chemong Road. Our assessment is that this concept has merit, but it would add additional operating costs compared to our recommended option. And it's also awaiting confirmation from Peterborough Transit about its operational feasibility. So the next couple of slides speak to the finances of the link upon expiry of grant funding, starting first with costs. In an arrangement where transit is contracted to a third party, there's two main cost categories: the cost to operate the buses and the cost of a township position to administer the service in the contract. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the contracted operations with Peterborough allow the township to only pay for the time that buses are actively in service, rather than having to pay to dedicate a vehicle or fleet of vehicles to the service. That means that hourly operating rate is very competitive, if not cheaper, than would be possible from a private operator. As such, we recommend maintaining the current operating arrangement with the city. For budgeting purposes, we're assuming that hourly operating costs escalate by 2% annually, which is consistent with the current agreement. The township administrative role is an existing fractional position whose purpose is to administer the contract with the city, monitor performance, and help promote the service. This administrative function would be a continued necessity once the service is made permanent. On the revenue side, there's three main sources of revenue that we're budgeting for, aside from local tax support. The first is provincial gas tax funding, which can cover a maximum of 75% of the net amount spent by the township and can vary as a function of system ridership, local population, and system operating cost. This means that funding received from the province increases or decreases in line with the township's own net spending on transit. It's also important to note that the township would only qualify for gas tax funding excuse me, if council passes a bylaw or resolution establishing public transportation as a permanent service. Pilot projects are not eligible. The second revenue source is from fares. While it would be theoretically possible to increase revenue by increasing fares above current levels, there are diminishing returns on these increases because of negative ridership impacts. And it would never be possible to increase fares to the point where they completely offset net operating cost. Fares on the link are also high already relative to peers, and as such, a major fare increase is not recommended. We have, however, assumed that the average fare will escalate at the same 2% rate as the hourly operating cost. The final and most substantial funding source is from third-party funders of the service. In parallel to our work on the service delivery review, staff have been in discussion with Trent University, Fleming College, and the Curve Lake First Nation, and have arrived at agreements in principle to fund the service after the expiry of the grant, the Community Transportation Grant. Trent and Fleming have agreed to continue their current operating contributions of $75,000 and $50,000, respectively. And Curve Lake has also agreed to fund the service and would contribute an amount proportional to the amount of service within the nation. So putting all those costs and revenues together, we have estimated what the township's net contribution would have to be for the first full year of operation. To this end, the table on this slide presents all the costs and revenue categories and calculates the net operating costs of the township in the bottom row of the table. The columns of the table reflect different levels of investment in transit as measured by the total number of daily round trips made by the system. For example, the 6-trip option would offer 3 daily trips to and from Curve Lake on Route 31 and 3 daily trips to and from Bridgenorth on Route 32. At this service level, the estimated operating cost to the township would be approximately $61,000 annually. If the 10-trip option was pursued, which is roughly in line with today's level of service, the net cost would be $145,000 for the first year of operation. As I noted earlier, The operating agreement with Peterborough Transit allows for a 2% annual increase in operating cost. And while some of this increase is offset by increased fares, it is still forecast that net operating cost will escalate over time. By 2030, the net cost to the township to operate the 6-trip option would be $72,000, while the cost of the 10-trip option would be $163,000. And just before I wrap up, I want to say that we got great feedback and insights from the public and stakeholders as part of the study's engagement program. We heard that residents, even those who are not transit riders, are broadly supportive of transit in the township, and that the current model of scheduled stop-to-stop service is the preferred way forward. We learned that most residents are traveling to Peterborough or Lakefield for their destinations, and that most riders are coming from Lakefield, Woodland Acres, and Curve Lake. And finally, riders would like to see more transit service on weekends in the future if it could be made available, along with more trip options available to them on weekdays. So wrapping up with our recommendations. Township staff should begin planning for the expiry of the Community Transportation Grant Program with a view to implementing our recommended service concept. This would entail coordinating with the province to establish requirements for gas tax funding, continuing discussions with Peterborough Transit to confirm route and operating details, continued discussion with funding partners to sign contribution agreements, and monitor federal and provincial funding announcements for new ways to offset operating costs. Following these arrangements, township staff will report back to council in 2025 with a formal request to establish the link as a permanent transit service beginning April 2026. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you, David. Are there any questions, Mr. Horsey? Deputy Mayor Black.
Thanks for the report, David. Lots of excellent work there, obviously. Couple of questions in the stakeholder engagements. The two largest payers, Sir Sanford and Trent, are mentioned as stakeholder engagements, yet you've said that they've agreed to continue to pay the 75,000 and 50,000. Were they prepared to pay more, given you're willing to play proportional ridership? Are they prepared to pay proportional ridership as well?
Through the chair, so discussions with the two post-secondary institutions have been handled by township staff. We did engage with them on their perspective of the service and the like, but in terms of the amount being negotiated, that was being handled by township staff, and I would direct the question to Angela.
Angela.
Yes, thank you. So certainly Fleming and Trent are very happy with the service and supportive of it. I think that they would be willing to come to the table should the township make a decision to make this a permanent service. We do have current agreements with them, and obviously they're willing to honor the current agreement, but I think they want to know kind of where the township stands before they make a further financial commitment.
Yep.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks for that. That's encouraging that they're willing to look at the financial picture as well. One of the things I noticed in your revenue and expenses thing is your revenues come out at 403,000, expenses 285. So your columns don't add up. And I think it's that 179 non-MTO revenue that's not included in your total. What is that? I'm talking about the column 6 trips. I'm just talking at the first column. They all don't add up.
So you, Madam Chair, I know that these numbers have been rounded, so they may not add up in particular. I'd be happy to double check our math. We have obviously checked this on our end before, so I'm a bit confused by the question, but we'd be happy to. Actually, I think I understand the question. So non-MTO revenue consists of the items below it in the table. So fares, Trent, Fleming, Curve Lake all add up to approximately 179,000. They're not in addition to that number.
Yeah, I see the indent now. Thank you for that clarification. I am concerned about losing the Ennismore piece of that. I think I'm in favor of public transit as a member of Page Friendly Peterborough. I certainly would like to see some kind of connection to all three wards of the municipality, but I've seen the statistics that you put forward. There's not a lot of use at this point, but maybe there's a way to enhance that use down the road when we get to a final decision as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyka.
Thank you. I have a few questions. Thank you for the report and for all of the work that staff has been doing to carry the link through this far. I find it interesting that the purpose and the premise of the study, I was a little confused by. It says in the executive summary that the purpose is not as to whether the township should carry on after the sunset of the grant. It's to determine how we're going to carry on. I think that's an interesting way to begin a study. The second is the premise. It's the strategic objective for the link. I think a strategic objective is the creation of a public transportation system to move people to various destinations in an efficient and an environmentally responsible way. And yet on page 9, you say the most important strategic objective is financial sustainability. I found that interesting. I thought financial sustainability is a tactic, not a strategy. It's the financial sustainability is a means through which you obtain a strategic goal. It's not a strategic goal in and of itself. I say that just as a comment. I want to go to page 6 for my first question. You use the words riders and rides interchangeably. You talk about ridership of the link, and then later on in the same paragraph, you talk about rides. So when it says that on page 6, the link recorded 18,000 rides, 18,115 rides, does that mean that 18,115 people rode on the link? I think the answer is no, but I want confirmation from you.
So through the chair, the technical term for this in our industry is boardings, and that means it is the number of times somebody boards the vehicle. And in the wording of the report, the word ridership and rides are used interchangeably, and they are used to mean boardings. So that doesn't mean it is individual people riding the service. It is the number of times a vehicle is boarded by a person.
Okay, so thank you. And through you, Mayor Sennis. So again, helping me to understand this. So if I rode the link 5 days a week, that would constitute 2 rides a day. I'm going to Trent, or I'm going to, or I'm doing whatever. 2 days, that'd be 2 rides a day. That'd be 10 rides a week. That'd be 40 rides a month. So that would be the 40. So therefore, if I was a regular user of the link, and if grant me holidays and long weekends and things, let's say I rode for 11 months, that equates to 440 rides. So that means, and again, I'm trying to understand this. So if there's 18,115 rides, and yet one rider for a year is riding 440 times, does the math work out that I'm really only talking about 42 people? 118,000 rides, boardings, it's really only 42 people.
Through you, Madam Chair, we don't have the information to come to that conclusion because we don't know how often individual riders use the link. So there is evidence that contingent of the ridership base uses it regularly because they buy monthly passes, but there's no evidence to suggest that there is a body of riders that are that small. And I'll say that, you know, this method and process of accounting for ridership is consistent across the industry, and it's how we and our industry counterparts report on patronage on transit.
Okay, so when we're talking about the 118,000 rides, then that number can't be relied upon as real. Okay.
Oh,
so
sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, we do have the number of riders though in the previous sentence. And we know that from the passes that are purchased.
Okay, that's the passes that are purchased, but that
Yeah.
doesn't count for all of the fares because there are people who pay $8 to ride. If I could move on then, if I go to page 11, I'm still talking about riders and rides, trying to understand this. Page 11, sir, through you, Mayor Sennis, it says that in comparing us to other municipalities, it says we are doing 4 rides per hour. Am I right? On that chart on page 11?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the metric here is to measure the number of rides, and again, that means boardings per hour that the service is in operation. So if you buy, for example, 100 hours of service from Peterborough Transit and you record 100 rides during those 100 hours, the number of rides per hour would be 1.
Okay, so according to the chart, we're 4 rides per hour. That is interesting. Okay. When you were doing this study, again through you, Chair, did you ride on the link while you were completing this study?
I did not personally ride on the link.
Okay. I did, and I will share some information in a second. The next question I have is regarding public engagement surveys. I noticed in the survey, and I thank you for listing it, there was nowhere on the survey where someone could have answered a question that said they don't want the link to continue. Why would that not be part of the survey?
Through Madam Chair, I will have to refer back to the specific questions that were asked, but I do believe there was a question that asked residents whether they supported transit and whether they would be supportive of operating funding to support transit. And we took that as an opportunity for people to voice their support or lack thereof. We also allowed residents to provide any comments that they desired in an open text format, which we did take into consideration through our review.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. You have a number of quotes that are positive and saying the link is a terrific thing. Were there any verbatim feedback, any quotes that were negative?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have those available to report verbatim, but I can say that not everybody that we heard from was positive about the service, but the overall response that we did receive was positive and supportive.
Right. So, but all we saw in the quotes was positive. One more question with respect to the surveys. A standard practice, I took a statistics course in university, which I hated every second of, by the way. But in that course, and I looked it up to make sure that I was remembering correctly, because that was more than a couple of months ago. In order for a survey to be considered valid and reliable, at least 10% of the general population must respond. According to our previous speaker who was looking at the strategic plan, in order to get 10% of the population of Selwyn, we'd need 119 people to respond. And there was only 109 in the first survey, 102 in the second. So that suggests that the survey results are neither valid nor reliable. Have you got a comment on that?
Dear Madam Chair, it's not unusual for a survey of this type to be done in a way that is not necessarily statistically significant of the entire population. These types of surveys are done for many different types of studies across all sorts of communities everywhere. And for example, if a study like this were to be done in Toronto and to be purported to be statistically significant, you would need tens of thousands of respondents to respond, and they are still very commonly done and do have merit. So we are not purporting to show that these results are statistically significant, but they do provide a cross-section of the community that took the time to respond to the survey and express their opinions.
Cross-section, but still not enough that it would be valid nor reliable. I want to share, one of the things that you mentioned in the report was that there was anecdotal information from staff. I want to give you some more anecdotal information that we might consider. And I'm certainly not going to read the entire 2-page report that I sent to council, but I rode the link on February 7th in the morning. I rode it again on February 21st on a Wednesday to see 2 different days, this time in the afternoon, a different time. And then again, when Trent and Sir Sanford Fleming were not fully in operation, although, classes still continue in the summer, but I rode it on Thursday, October 29th. So 3 different days of the week, different times. And what I found was really interesting is that I was by myself just about the entire route. This is Route 31. I have a list which I could share with you, but where people were getting on and getting off each of the bus stops. But I was by myself or sitting with one, not counting the driver, or with one other person or two other persons, almost the entire route, all three times. There was one other thing that was interesting, and that is when we went, this is in February 7th, when we went to Trent University, and there were 4 people on the bus at that point, and they all got off at Trent. The bus driver got off the bus, locked the door, and the bus idled empty with me in there with my book for 11 minutes. And then we took off and we went back around Lakefield, and then we left Lakefield completely empty, just me, went all the way to Curve Lake. And then I sat at the end of the road at Curve Lake for 17 minutes. The bus sat and idled, which meant, and then I came back. There was one person who picked it up near the gas station in Curve Lake. So I came back all the way from Curve Lake to Lakefield with one person on the bus. Stopped at Foodland, and the bus stopped and idled again for 6 minutes. And I understand why, because he was flying by almost every bus stop, was nobody waiting, and he had to keep the schedule. But I found it interesting that for the one ride from Lakefield, around Lakefield to Trent to Curve Lake, back around Lakefield again, for one route or one circumference of that route, we sat idling for 34 minutes. So if we are talking about environmental responsibility, I don't know that a bus sitting idling for 34 minutes to do one run is environmentally responsible. Won't go through the whole thing again, but on August 29th, we did the whole thing again. This time I went absolutely empty all the way to Curve Lake, absolutely empty all the way back from Curve Lake. And the total time sitting idling was 25 minutes. For that route. And again, I don't see how idling a bus for that length of time in order to do one lap is environmentally responsible. So if, and you say you can't really say how many riders we've got, but it looks like we've got about 42 riders. I will not be able to, in good conscience, with everything that I've said and the questions that I've asked, support the motion that we take $105,000 once we reach that point in order to do this for 42 riders. I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
All right, so just to be clear, we are asking that we receive this report, send it back to staff. They do some work. This service is paid for another year until March of 2026. There's no money being asked for at this point in time, and we will be getting a report back from staff down the road. I'm going to ask that it come in the first quarter. There's no timeline in the recommendation, but at this point in time, there's no money being asked for, Councillor Boyko. And I just want to make a comment to one of your comments. I went to Toronto via the Oshawa Go at 10:30 in the morning one morning, and there were 4 of us sitting in one of the trains until we got almost to Toronto. That doesn't mean that we don't need the GO train. It's a snapshot. Mine was a snapshot, yours is a snapshot. There are times when there's high usage. And I also want to comment that we used to have a worker bus that went from Lakefield into Peterborough every day. And when that stopped, it was provided by a private enterprise. But when it stopped, there was a huge, loud hue and a cry wanting that bus back. There are people who are employees that either go from our township down to Peterborough or come from Peterborough to work in our township. And we have to, I guess we have to look at whether we want to be involved in public transit or not. By accepting this particular recommendation, we are saying go and do some further work as a result of the service delivery review and come back to us. So I think you're being a bit premature to say, no, stop it now.
If I could
Yeah.
respond, I'm not saying stop it now. That's not what I'm saying. And also with respect to a snapshot, that's why I went 3 different times. I don't know how many times you've ridden the link. I think I would invite all members of council and all members of staff to ride the link, different routes at different times as I have. And it certainly is an interesting experience. Not mentioned in your comments was all of the time that is spent idling. Another thing that you mentioned was links to Peterborough. I'm serve as the liaison of the Peterborough Police Board, and one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about, and the Peterborough Examiner article 2 days ago talked about our chief, the Peterborough chief, again talking about the crisis in downtown Peterborough. And so therefore saying, let us make a better, clearer link so people can move more clearly between downtown Peterborough and Lakefield is not a selling point. So my recommendation is not, and my comments were not to say, let's stop the link now, because I understand, thank you for explaining it to me, but I understand fully what we're being asked here. But what I am saying now is that my recommendation would be, rather than continue to gather more information, we've got a few years of information. I would say, I would ask the staff to initiate conversations now with the other stakeholders to plan the end of the link when the funding ends in March 2026.
All right, Deputy Mayor Black. Oh,
Thank you.
sorry, Jeff, you're-
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So David, another question around the ridership. You talked a lot about the Woodland Acres being a big pickup point, a big boarding area. What percentage of the ridership do you think is coming from Woodland Acres? I lived there one time and I used to walk to university from there. It's not that far, but people obviously are jumping on the bus at that stop to get into the university a few blocks away. What percentage of the ridership is from Woodland Acres?
Through you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, Peterborough Transit does not collect stop-by-stop ridership data that would allow me to definitively answer that question. What we do know is that there are a large number of students that live in Woodland Acres, and that student ridership on the link amounts to approximately 75% of all boardings.
The other question around Woodland Acres is what percentage of those students are Peterborough residents versus township residents? Because I don't know the layout anymore, but the largest number of apartment buildings are in the city of Peterborough along Woodland Acres. What percentage of them are actually using their Trent Pass as Peterborough residents on the bus, do you think? You probably don't have, again, you explained you don't have that breakdown, but it'd be interesting to see, are we funding Peterborough residents as well? And I also go back, so it's just follow up.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
because we got somebody else.
As Councillor Boyko said, I was disappointed that there wasn't more discussion with the 2 primary providers or stakeholders around potential down the road. I know you've answered the question, but I think that's a big issue when 75% of the ridership and some of it potentially City of Peterborough people. And I guess they're all residents, whether they're students or non-students. I think they are all residents. But when we've asked Curve Lake to proportionally invest, I think we should ask both those parties to proportionally invest as well.
So Angie, would you like to speak to that?
Well, I think David could speak to the proportional contribution from Trenton Fleming. Fleming is definitely paying probably a greater share in terms of their contribution versus the number of students that are riding it. And definitely the Trent students using the service, it is comparable to their use. So we would like 100%. I think Trent and Fleming are both willing to come to the table with a little bit more in terms of a contribution to the service. But I guess at this point, for them to invest a lot of time and energy when they don't have a commitment from us in terms of how we want to move forward. It just wasn't possible to get a commitment on that. I could also just add, I just want to address the idling comment, just to give a little bit of perspective, which may or may not be helpful. I did check in with Peterborough Transit on the comment. All these buses are diesel buses, so oftentimes they don't like to start and stop a diesel bus because it does have an impact on the starter for the bus. Certainly if you're riding in February, it's also the bus driver's workplace. So, they're trying to keep the bus warm while they're sitting on the bus. So that would be a few reasons why the bus would potentially be idling for a period of time. It's not just, there are some reasons for it.
David, you had your hand up.
Thank you. And through the chair. So regarding the proportional funding, I think one way that we've looked at this is if you look at the cost and you strip out, if you look at the net cost, stripping out revenue from fares and stripping out revenue from the province through the gas tax program, the amount that the township would pay is about 29% of that net cost to operate the system. And if you look at the boardings by fare type, about 25% of boardings are in that general rider category that are not students, which suggests that the amount that the township would pay on a net basis for the service roughly aligns with the usage that township residents are getting out of it.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Thank you through you, Mayor Senes. David, thank you for this report. It is nice to see that the link has had a steady increase in ridership, which a certain amount it was attributed to our post-secondary students. I teach as a post-secondary professor down in the GTA, and my wife teaches here locally, and we are very aware of the impacts that are coming our way due to the federal and provincial government's decisions on limiting international students coming into Canada and the province. And the impact that's going to be having on the post-secondary institutions. How do you see this impacting ridership, or has that been considered as of yet?
Through you, Madam Chair. I will say that that is a risk. And I think in the time that is available between now and when the funding expires from the province in March, it would be wise for staff to monitor trends in ridership to see if that does suggest any longer term reductions in ridership. I think it's too early to make the call as to whether that would drastically change our recommendations. We do know that post-secondary students do drive a good deal of ridership, so it does present a risk.
Councillor Koulis.
Councillor Henley stole my question. And it's even in red, so he totally looked off my computer. I'm gonna follow it up though with a kind of a more probing question to that. So I don't know if staff can answer this because you've been working with Trent and Fleming, but how was that amount calculated? Because I'm still a student. And so like I have the option and I go to Carleton. So I'm obviously opting out of Carleton Public Transit in Ottawa. We have the option to opt out or opt in. So I'm wondering if that will impact that amount as well, especially if we lose the number of students possibly physically around us.
Yeah, so the agreements we have with Fleming and with Trent are with the student associations. So they pay an amount. It really doesn't relate to the number of students that are actually riding the bus. We came up with the number. Quite frankly, we just tried to determine potentially how many riders would be in the township to come up with a number. And I wouldn't say there was a real science to it because we had no idea how many people would ride the bus. We started with Trent, and I forgive me, it was a lower number, and we just kind of worked our way up over 3 years to get to the end of the agreement to 75,000. So now that we've got good numbers and we're showing the percentage of ridership, I think that really is a great case to go to them as partners. I mean, it's the other service providers that have CT funding in the province are really envious of us because essentially we've got two really good funding partners that are providing a transportation service that is subsidizing a great service for the rest of the general population in the township. So that is a huge benefit that a lot of other communities don't have.
Follow up.
Is there any other opportunities to chat with other people? Like even Trent itself, right? Like this is like a subgroup within Trent. Like would Trent University as in of itself as an entity, would they sign on to an agreement with us as well?
I
or-
don't think so. I think the student association, they're the ones that collect that fee from the students and it goes to
Yeah.
transportation. Similar with Fleming. Curve Lake is on board as a funding partner as well. So they're certainly willing to contribute to the portion of the service that will operate within the First Nation. We've calculated at what that would be. Then similarly, if we want to continue the service, then our portion would be about that 29 to 30%.
Can I just clarify that? Like, I think to kind of clarify what I was asking there in my mind, but probably didn't say, is there other stakeholders that we can approach or have approached asking to buy into this?
I wouldn't say in terms of a similar agreement that we would have with Fleming and Trent, but we could look at other opportunities. If we were to continue this service and we wanted to have a bus shelter, for instance, we could have sponsorship opportunities on the bus shelter. So that might be something we could partner with the business community on. The other thing is that maybe businesses who their employees rely on the service, maybe they would want to have some type of kind of pass for their employees if they thought that was appropriate. I think there's some opportunities for us, but the purpose of the CT grant is really to get you started, get the service going. Transit's hard for a rural community to embrace because we don't do it in a rural community. People don't really trust it. They're not going to use it regularly to go back and forth to work or school unless they know it's reliable. So that's the purpose of the CT grant, was to create a reliable service, which I think we've done. If you get rid of the service, you're definitely going to hear from people who are reliant on it and do need it. I do think there's opportunities for us, if it's a permanent service, to look at some other partnerships, sponsorships being one of them.
Sorry, I have one more.
Yeah.
It's an Ennismore focus question. Follow through you. So if we're removing it from Ennismore, how have we talked with those service groups, or how are we going to spread the word and deal with that?
Yeah, so I think that's what's recommended. I think that's something that we'd want to bring back as staff. We'd want to work a little bit with Peterborough Transit on some options. If council was willing to, take forward the opportunity for some further study on this, we could take a look at it. The reality in Ennismore is it goes to the community center. So it's already not servicing a great big area of Ennismore. So people if they're not on the route, they have to get to the route somehow. So if we can collapse the service a little bit, if they can get to Bridgenorth, they can still get on the service. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, well, I believe that John had put forward a motion. Is there a seconder for his motion? I see none. So unless there's any other comment, we do have a recommendation in front of us that this go back to staff and that they do all the diligent work to come back with further information to us. And at the bottom, it says that a report be provided to council on the proposed implementation plan. I would like to add in Q1 2025, if it's okay with council to add that. I want a timeline.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Is it?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, because we'll need time to speak with Peterborough Transit on this, and they'll need to kind of think about some route planning. So maybe let's put it to Q2. And we'll do our very best to really focus in at the first of the year on that planning piece and bring back that report Q2.
I would feel better with the timeline. So would someone like to make that motion? Councillor Henry. And Councillor Koulis seconding. Yes.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. No, I'm going to support the motion, but I do understand Councillor Boyko's concerns about some of the things that he's expressed. And I think this will give us another 9 months or 7, 8 months to, again, look at some numbers. And I hope we can collect some more statistical information with respect to how many Peterborough Transit people are actually using it off Woodland Acres versus our own residents, things like that. So we understand if we take it away, if, you know, a large portion of the students are coming from the Woodland Acres area, they can walk. As everybody else did before the bus was there. But so I'd like to see some kind of statistics from the transit, if they could somehow track the actual ridership from within the township versus just Woodland Acres, because that sounds like what the majority of the growth has been.
We can try to get that. As I said, they don't have a way to record that. We can see if they have a sense. It may be more of a sense in terms of the percentage.
Yeah, just to understand that. Good. Thank you.
Could I have a recorded vote, please?
Recorded vote requested.
Councillor Boyko,
No.
Councillor Koulis.
Yeah.
Councillor Henry. Mayor Sennis.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Black. Motion is carried.
Okay. All right, is there any questions that have been put forward, Madam Clerk?
No questions. And sorry, if I may.
Oh, yes.
We've got David still on the line. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry. And I'll just say, yeah, we are wrapping this up. It's been quite a lengthy process. So I do want to thank David and Adam in his office, Arcadis, for all the work that they've done in preparing this review. Lily, of course, was very instrumental in a lot of the work regarding this review as well. Of course, she's on maternity leave. Paris was able to pick up the slack and has been wonderful as well. So lots of effort to get this to where it is today. Thanks to Lean and Janice as well, who've looked through a lot of numbers too. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you. Echoed by us. And in our recommendation, we did move to receive your report, David. So thank you. I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Council and Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, Tanya, we have a report from you on ward adjustment.
Sure, thank you. So council will recall, not all council members, but some that were on council would recall that in 2017, unless you were paying attention and you were watching council meetings on the bi-weekly basis, I hope. So in 2017, the council at the time passed a bylaw to essentially take the Lakefield South Development area and remove it from the Smith ward into Lakefield. And that was really primarily because of servicing for policing and to have some continuity in terms of the community. Since that time, you guys are familiar with the Triple T development. They have severed 5 lots from that development area. And those 5 lots would make more sense to go back into the Smith ward as they are off of Seaforth Crescent, Lakefield Road and Highway 7. So, 7th line, sorry, Highway 7, thank you. And the 7th line. So it would make more sense for those lots to go back into the Smith ward as they would be policed by OPP rather than the Peterborough Police as our contract for Lakefield. So this really is a report just to enact that process. As council would have read in the report, there is a little bit of an appeal period. So we will advertise council's intention and passing the bylaw today, if that so be the case. And then there's an appeal period for that. And then following that, we'll certainly advise all of the appropriate agencies of the change so that we are all good to go in time for the municipal election in 2026.
Question by Councillor Black, or Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, I have no problem with this. It kind of makes sense. They're not on service land by any means, and I'm familiar with all 5 of them. My question really is, around ward boundaries. We have such a disparity in size of wards, and I think some of this is premised on servicing, but also policing. Considering that the Peterborough Police come all the way up Lakefield Road to get to Lakefield, what would be the consideration of taking Lakefield Ward right down to the city limits? Maybe the boundary is the center line or something like that to help balance the wards out. So Counselor Henry doesn't have to knock on so many doors down the road. Like, what's the consideration there? How would that work? Because that would help balance, again, the wards a little bit out. I know it's not maybe a question for today, but
I'm going to give you a bit of an answer because I was on council when we went through this process. And I can tell you the people that live in Smith did not want to be part of Lakefield, not because there's some kind of a fight between the wards, but Peterborough policing's more expensive than the OPP. And there was a lot of pushback from the people that lived in Smith Ward.
Oh.
They did not want to become part, and if you want to get involved in that fight, more power to you, but I don't want to go there. We did, and there was it was very loud that people didn't want to do it. And Lakefield is going to be growing, as we know, exponentially in the next little while. So they'll soon catch up to at least Ennismore in population.
never mind.
Yeah. Councillor Henry.
I was looking forward to meeting you in the parking lot there. Would this happen to go back to our, my conversation with you about crayons on like my first week here?
No comment.
Okay. That says a lot. Definitely in support of this, but also with Deputy Bears Black's thinking there, I think a really defined map would be helpful, like incredibly defined. I know we can find it, but something that's easily accessible, because I was speaking with some people that don't seem to be aware of what ward they are in, unless of course they are in Smith and they don't want to pay for water that they don't get and all the other issues I could bring up. So I'm definitely in support of this. Yes.
Are you looking for an updated map?
Yes. That's.
Can we get one?
Once this goes.
A ward map?
Yeah, so we do have township-wide maps. They aren't detailed in terms of particular lots and streets and where exactly they fall within the ward or within what ward. We used to have at one point at the front, I think, like ward-based maps. I can certainly look into something, but top of mind, I don't think we have anything specific to that. Like a map that we could provide right now. But we can look into it.
Just follow up to that. If we could have it before the next election, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'll get my crayon box out.
Actually, when I first moved here, Mary Smith came and sat at my kitchen table, brought a map of Smith Ennismore Lakefield, that's what it was at the time, and drew for me where Smith was. And we go down the middle of the lakes. So for Smith, and of course up to Fowler's Corners. And do you really want to see it? Because you might, you know, do you realize how big it is? I know.
It might be something we can produce through our GIS or CGIS system
Okay.
fairly easily, but we can get back to you.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, did we vote on that? Did we have a mover and seconder? Okay, moved by Councillor Koulis, seconded by Councillor Boyko, all in favor. That's carried, thank you. Is there anything anyone wants pulled from consent? So if we can have a motion to receive, to approve all the consent items. Councillor Henry, Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor, that's carried. Under other new and unfinished business, Councillor Henry.
Thank you, through Mayor Senes. I would like to withdraw my request for a delegation to address the mental health and addictions crisis. Although both of the issues are important to me, these are as a two-tier municipality, a county responsibility. As municipality, this council directed staff to provide a letter in support of the letter from the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus Rural Municipal Leaders Support Solve the Crisis campaign to address the homelessness and mental health. So we did receive this in correspondence on November 12th at that council meeting, which came in from the Township of Georgian Bluffs. And secondly, I would like to withdraw my support for Deputy Mayor Black's delegation request to address the transition of the Peterborough County OPP Detachment Board. I believe that our receiving item 2 in the correspondence from Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus addresses the impacts of rising OPP costs to the municipalities. and that the need for transparency and the associated recommendations is our best option at this time. The growing pains that the Peterborough County OPP Detachment Board is experiencing are nothing more than that, as all boards are experiencing right now, and I do see them being rectified within the near future.
All right, so we have a motion to withdraw the 2 delegation requests that we made at the last meeting. Can I have someone second it? Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor? It's carried, thank you. I have a couple of things to mention with regards to the library. We have a volunteer Christmas drop-in that council's invited to on December the 9th from 2 to 4 at the Bridge North Hall. It's going to be coffee, tea, and sweets. And then on December the 16th from 12 to 2 at the Makerspace, we are looking to have a board council Christmas social. So if you can mark in your calendars, December the 9th, 2 to 4, Bridge North Hall, December 16th, 12 to 2, Makerspace. And I wanted to mention that I've spoken to the Lakefield Legion Branch 77, and in their next application for Remembrance Day, they're going to be asking to have the road closed for the duration of the Remembrance Day ceremony to the county, and I've been told by the county that they will grant it. Okay. Is there any other new or unfinished business? Seeing none, we have bylaws. Madam Clerk.
Yeah, we've got 67. That's the ward adjustment for the Lakefield South properties. 68, an authorizing bylaw. It's a merger agreement. 69, an authorizing bylaw to execute the funding agreement with the MTO. 70, to amend the development charges bylaw for roads and related expenses. 71, again, DC amendment for fire services. 72, DC amendments for parks and rec services. 73, DC amendments for library services. 74, DC amendments for Lakefield South wastewater services and area specific costs.
You can have someone move that, please. Councillor Henry, seconded by Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor. It's carried. Thank you. Were you against it? Okay. And confirming bylaw 2024-075, Councillor Koulis and Councillor Henry, all in favor. It's carried. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Henry and Deputy Mayor Black. Thank you. Have a good evening. December 16th, the first one's